Most love stories begin with a dance. Mine began with a dirty rag and the remnants of spilled wine, scrubbing tables while the rest of the world spun in silk and starlight. They say the moon festival is when fate reveals itself, when the goddess Selene weaves destinies beneath her silver gaze. For everyone else, perhaps. For me, fate meant calloused hands and aching knees, invisible among the celebrating crowds of Crimson Peak. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. But then again, nothing about my life had followed its intended course since the night my family's secret shattered everything we'd built. The grand ballroom of the Crimson Palace blazed with 1,000 lanterns, their golden light reflecting off jeweled masks and flowing gowns. The Moon Festival brought wolves from every corner of the realm to compete in the sacred trials, to forge alliances, and most importantly, to find their destined mates beneath the blessing of the full moon. I kept my head down, moving between abandoned tables like a ghost, collecting empty goblets and forgotten plates. My rough servant's dress marked me as furniture, necessary but unnoticed. The enchanted shackle around my ankle, hidden beneath my skirts, ensured I couldn't shift, couldn't run, couldn't be anything more than what Lord Aldrich had made me. His insurance policy. 3 years. 3 years since my uncle had discovered what my mother had hidden. That our bloodline carried the gift of moonsight, the ability to see through any deception, any lie, any enchantment. A power that hadn't manifested in generations until it blazed to life in my younger brother's eyes. The memory still burned. Aldrich's guards dragging 12-year-old Marcus away, my mother's screams, my father's blood pooling on marble floors when he tried to resist, and Aldrich's cold smile as he placed the binding on my ankle. "Your brother will compete in the trials," he had said. "He'll use his gift to ensure I win the crown. And you, dear niece, will guarantee his cooperation. One word of defiance, one hint of rebellion, and this pretty shackle will tighten until your foot turns black and falls off. Then I'll start on your fingers." So Marcus competed, and I served. He lived in a gilded cage in the tower, and I scrubbed floors and polished silver, both of us bound by threats neither could escape. During the day, I was nobody, but at night, when the palace slept, I climbed the servant stairs to the tower where my brother waited, and we'd press our palms against the iron bars that separated us, sharing warmth, sharing strength, sharing the stubborn hope that somehow, someday, we'd be free. The orchestra swelled into the dance of destinies, the Moon Festival's most sacred tradition. Partners spun across the floor in intricate patterns, their movements telling the ancient story of how the first wolves found their mates beneath Selene's light. I'd danced it once, in another life, when I wore sapphire instead of rough cotton, when my name was Lyra Moonstone instead of just girl. A goblet crashed near the head table. I hurried forward, dropping to my knees to gather the shattered pieces. Blood welled on my palm where a shard cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Pain was familiar. Safe, even. It meant I was still fighting, still surviving. "You're bleeding." The voice was midnight and thunder, power barely leashed. I knew who it was before I looked up. Everyone knew that voice. Alpha King Theron Nightfall, ruler of the 7 territories, the wolf who'd united the warring packs through strength and surprising mercy. The king who had no mate, no equal, despite years of searching. I kept my eyes on the floor. Proper servant protocol. "My apologies for the disturbance, Your Majesty. I'll clean this immediately." That's not what I said. A hand appeared in my vision, scarred, strong, extended palm up. An offer, not a command. My breath caught. The Alpha King didn't kneel. The Alpha King certainly didn't offer his hand to servants. Around us, the dancing had stopped. The entire ballroom held its breath. Hundreds of eyes fixed on this impossible scene. I could feel my uncle's gaze burning from across the room, could practically hear his mental calculations spinning. If I took that hand, everything would change. If I took that hand, I'd have to look up, and he'd see my eyes, my mother's eyes, unique as moonlight, marking me as clearly as any bloodline decree. If I took that hand. But that's when I smelled it. Beneath the forest rain scent that marked him as alpha, beneath the expensive cologne and formal clothing, wolfsbane, fresh wolfsbane, recently handled. The kind used in only one purpose, breaking enchantments. My heart stopped. There was only one enchantment in this palace that mattered, the one on Marcuse, the one that forced him to compete tomorrow in the final trial. The Alpha King's hand remained steady, patient, and in that moment, I made my choice. I took his hand. The moment our skin touched, lightning raced through my veins. Not painful, but alive, electric, like every nerve had been sleeping until this moment. His fingers closed around mine, firm but gentle, and he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. I made the mistake of meeting his eyes, dark as the void between stars, with flecks of gold that shouldn't exist in nature. But it was the expression in them that stole my breath. Recognition. Not of my face, but something deeper, older, more primal. His pupils dilated, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Your Majesty," Lord Aldrich's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Please forgive my servant's clumsiness. She's new, untrained. She's injured," Theron said, not looking away from me. His thumb brushed across my palm, and the cut sealed itself, not slowly, but instantly, as if it had never existed. Healing magic. Only the most powerful alphas possessed it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Healing a servant was unheard of. Touching one publicly was scandal enough. But this? "What's your name?" His voice was soft, meant only for me. I opened my mouth, then closed it. If I spoke, if Aldrich heard even a whisper of my real voice, he'd know I was close to breaking. The shackle on my ankle pulsed once, a warning. "She doesn't speak, Your Majesty," Aldrich interjected smoothly, moving closer. "Trauma from childhood, I'm afraid. We keep her on out of charity." Liar. The word burned in my throat, but I swallowed it down. Theron's eyes narrowed slightly, and his grip on my hand tightened for just a moment before he released me. "I see." He studied Aldrich with an intensity that made my uncle shift uncomfortably. "And you are?" "Lord Aldrich of the Eastern Reaches, Your Majesty. Honored to host tomorrow's final trial at my estate." "Ah, yes. The trial." Theron's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your nephew competes, doesn't he? Marcus, I believe?" My heart slammed against my ribs. He knew Marcus's name. Why would the Alpha King know the name of one competitor among dozens? "Indeed, Your Majesty." The boy shows promise. More than promise, from what I've heard. Theron accepted a goblet from a passing servant, though his attention never left Aldrich. They say he has a gift. Something about seeing truth? The blood drained from my uncle's face. "Rumors, Your Majesty. Nothing more." "Perhaps." Theron took a sip of wine. "I should like to meet him before tomorrow's trial." "A private audience tonight?" "I'm afraid that's impossible. The competitors are in seclusion, preparing. Then after the trial, it wasn't a request. I'm particularly interested in gifts that involve truth. You see, Lord Aldrich, I've been investigating some disturbing reports from the eastern reaches. Missing younglings, families torn apart, all traced back to 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when my parents died, when everything fell apart. Aldrich's hand moved subtly to his hip, where a silver blade rested. Tragic times, Your Majesty. The border wars were brutal. There were no border wars in the eastern reaches 3 years ago. Theron's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I would know. I ended them 5 years past. The tension crackled between them. Around us, nobles pretended to resume dancing, but everyone watched. Everyone listened. This was more entertainment than any moon festival had provided in years. You! Theron turned back to me suddenly. You'll serve at tomorrow's trial. Aldrich stepped forward. Your Majesty, she's needed here. Are you refusing a direct command from your king? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Of course not, Your Majesty. Aldrich's jaw clenched. She'll be there. Theron stepped closer to me, close enough that his scent, forest after rain, deadly nightshade, and something uniquely him, wrapped around me like armor. Tomorrow, then, he said quietly, and there was a promise in those words that I didn't understand. As he walked away, the crowd parting before him like water, I caught a glimpse of something tucked into his belt. A sprig of wolfsbane, wrapped in silver thread. But not just any wolfsbane. The rare midnight variety that only grew in one place, the ruins of the Moonstone estate. My family's estate. My knees nearly buckled. He knew. Somehow, the Alpha King knew who I was. But if he knew, why hadn't he exposed me? Why heal my hand? Why insist I serve tomorrow? The shackle on my ankle burned suddenly, viciously. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Across the room, Aldrich stood with his hand clenched around something in his pocket, the binding stone that controlled my shackle. His message was clear. Remember your place. Remember what I can do. But as I limped back to the servants' quarters that night, one thought consumed me. The Alpha King had touched my hand, and for the first time in 3 years, I'd felt like myself again. Tomorrow would change everything. The servants' quarters were silent when I returned, but I didn't go to my cot. Instead, I climbed the narrow stairs hidden behind a false panel, the ones that led to Marcus's tower prison. My ankle throbbed with each step, Aldrich's punishment for drawing the Alpha King's attention. Marcus was waiting at the bars, his young face gaunt from 3 years of captivity. At 15, he should have been training with other young wolves, learning to hunt, to fight, to laugh. Instead, his unusual violet eyes, eyes that could pierce any illusion, stared at me with too much wisdom. Lyra, he whispered, using my real name only when we were alone. Something's different. Your scent. I pressed my palm against his through the bars. The Alpha King touched me. His eyes widened. The prophecy. Mother used to speak of it, when an alpha's healing touch awakens. Shh. I glanced around nervously. Even here, Aldrich had ways of listening. Marcus, he had wolfsbane, the midnight variety from our estate. That's impossible. Aldrich burned everything. I know what I saw. I pulled out a small bundle from my apron, bread and cheese I'd saved from the feast. As he ate, I told him everything. Theron's questions, his knowledge of the eastern reaches, his insistence that I serve tomorrow. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, Lyra, I've been seeing things, visions, during the trials. My blood chilled. What kind of visions? The truth beneath truth. Not just lies, but layers. Tomorrow's trial, there's something wrong with it. The challenge isn't what Aldrich claims, and there's a woman, pale-haired, beautiful. She's been watching me, but no one else seems to see her. Pale-haired. My mother had pale hair before she died. Marcus dash dash. Footsteps echoed in the corridor below. We both froze. I recognized the heavy tread. Aldrich's enforcer, Garrett. Go, Marcus hissed. If they find you here... I squeezed his fingers once more and fled down the opposite stairway, one that led to the old wing of the palace. But instead of returning to safety, I found myself in a corridor I'd never seen before, despite 3 years of cleaning these halls. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating portraits of wolves I didn't recognize. No, wait, I did recognize one. The woman in the centermost painting had my mother's face, but younger, wearing a crown of silver leaves. You shouldn't be here. I spun around. A woman stood in the shadows, pale-haired and ethereal, exactly as Marcus had described. But I could see through her slightly, as if she were made of moonlight itself. Who? I'm what remains of your mother's sister, your aunt, Celestia. She stepped forward, and I saw her eyes were the same unusual shade as mine. I've been waiting for you to find this place. Your mother's blood, our blood, it calls to these halls. You're dead. Aldrich said the entire Moonstone line was executed. My body died, but the Moon Festival has thinned the veil, and tomorrow's trial will tear it completely. Your uncle plans to use Marcus to expose every wolf with hidden power, to claim them all for himself. But there's something he doesn't know. She moved closer, and I felt warmth despite her translucent form. The Alpha King isn't here by chance. I've been sending him dreams for months. Dreams of you. My heart stopped. What? The mate bond, Lyra. It's been pulling him here, to you. He doesn't fully understand it yet, but his wolf does. That's why he touched you tonight. That's why he could heal you. True mates can break any binding, any curse, even the one on your ankle. I looked down at the shackle that had imprisoned me for 3 years, but if he tries to break it without the binding stone, it will kill me. Unless you complete the mate bond first. Celestia's form was fading as dawn approached. Tomorrow, during the trial, when the moon reaches its apex, you'll have one chance. But Lyra, her voice grew urgent. Aldrich has made a bargain with something dark. The woman he serves, she feeds on power, on gifts like Marcus's, like yours. My gift? But I don't. You do. It's why Aldrich keeps you close but bound. You have the complement to Marcus's sight. Where he sees truth, you can reshape it. Not illusions, actual reality manipulation. Your mother suppressed it to protect you. But when the Alpha touched you tonight, she was almost gone now, just a whisper of light. It awakened. Tomorrow you'll have to choose, hide and survive, or reveal yourself and fight. Either way, the Moon Festival will end in blood. The corridor suddenly spun. When my vision cleared, I was back in the servants' quarters, lying on my cot as if I'd never left. But clutched in my hand was something impossible. A silver leaf, delicate as frost, real as the dawn light creeping through the windows. Tomorrow had arrived. The trial ground stretched across Aldrich's estate like a wound in the earth. 3 concentric circles had been carved into the ground, filled with silver dust that would burn any wolf who tried to cross without permission. In the center, a raised platform held 13 competitors, Marcus among them, all wearing ceremonial white robes that would show every drop of blood spilled. I stood with the other servants at the platform's edge, a tray of ceremonial wine balanced in my hands. The shackle on my ankle felt heavier today, tighter, as if Aldrich had reinforced his control. The Alpha King sat in the place of honor, his presence commanding even in stillness. He hadn't looked at me once since arriving, but I could feel his awareness like a physical touch. Beside him sat a woman I'd never seen before, beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, stark, perfect, and deadly. Pale hair cascaded to her waist, and her smile never wavered. "Lords and ladies," Aldrich announced, stepping into the first circle. "Today's trial will determine not just strength or speed, but truth itself. Each competitor will face the Mirror of Souls, an ancient artifact that reveals one's deepest nature." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Mirror of Souls was legend, supposedly destroyed centuries ago to prevent its misuse. "But first," Aldrich continued, his eyes finding mine across the distance, "we must ensure purity of purpose. Each competitor will drink from the cup of binding, swearing their loyalty to the crown." My hands trembled. The wine on my tray. I'd prepared it myself this morning under Garrett's watchful eye, but now it shimmered with an oily sheen I hadn't noticed before. "You," Aldrich pointed at me, "serve the competitors." I moved forward on unsteady legs. As I approached the platform, the pale-haired woman beside Theron stood. "How exciting," she purred, her voice like poisoned honey. "Young Marcus is competing, isn't he?" The boy with the violet eyes. I've heard such fascinating things about his gift. Marcus went rigid as I approached him with the cup. His eyes met mine, and I saw terror there. He'd seen something in a vision, something about this wine. I stumbled. The tray tipped, wine splashing across the platform. The liquid hissed where it hit the silver dust, releasing toxic smoke. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. "Clumsy fool!" Aldrich snarled, starting forward. "Stop!" Theron's voice cut through the chaos. He was on his feet, his power rippling outward like a physical force. "That wine was poisoned." "Impossible," Aldrich protested. "The girl prepared it." "If anyone." "The girl who cannot speak to defend herself?" Theron stepped into the first circle, and the silver dust parted before him like water. "How convenient." He approached me, and this time his eyes held mine with blazing intensity. "Show me," he commanded, but his voice was gentle. "Show me the truth." I didn't understand what he meant until I felt it, the gift Celestia had spoken of. Power uncoiled in my chest, wild and eager after years of suppression. Without conscious thought, I raised my hand. The air shimmered. Reality bent, reformed, showing what had truly happened. Garrett adding poison to the wine while I was turned away. Not an illusion. I had pulled the truth from the past itself, made it visible to all. "Impossible!" Aldrich shouted. "She's creating false images." "No," Marcus said, stepping forward. His violet eyes blazed as he used his gift. "It's real. Every detail is true. She's not lying. She's revealing. Her gift shows what was hidden." "Silence, boy." Aldrich grabbed for something in his pocket. The binding stone. But the pale-haired woman moved faster than human eyes could follow. She stood behind Aldrich, one delicate hand on his throat. "Now, now. Let's not be hasty. The game is just getting interesting." Her face rippled, and for a moment I saw something else beneath, something ancient and hungry, with too many teeth. "Who are you?" Theron demanded, and I heard his wolf in the growl beneath his words. "I am Revena," she said, releasing Aldrich, who fell gasping to his knees. "And I've come to collect what was promised. You see, Lord Aldrich made a bargain 3 years ago. The moonstone gifts in exchange for power. He's delivered the boy, but the girl..." Well, she was supposed to be broken by now. She turned to me, and her smile was all predator. But you're not broken, are you, little moon child? You're awakening. How delicious. The binding stone in Aldrich's hand pulsed. The shackle on my ankle constricted viciously, dropping me to my knees. Blood seeped through my dress where the metal cut into flesh. Lyra. I'd never heard my real name shouted with such anguish. Marcus tried to run to me, but Revena gestured lazily, and he froze mid-step. Lyra? Theron repeated, and understanding dawned in his eyes. Lyra Moonstone, you're Elena's daughter, the lost princess of the Eastern Reaches. Through the pain, I met his gaze and nodded. His rage was magnificent and terrible. Power exploded from him, shattering the ceremonial circles, his form blurred between man and massive black wolf. Release her. Now. Revena laughed, the sound like breaking glass. An alpha's command? How adorable. But I'm older than your authority, Wolf King. She waved her hand, and every competitor except Marcus collapsed, their life force flowing into her like streams of light. The crowd screamed, tried to flee, but found themselves trapped by an invisible barrier. You see, Revena continued conversationally, as if she weren't draining 12 young wolves of their lives. I've been feeding on gifts like these for centuries. But the Moonstone line? They're special. Their power doesn't just see truth or reveal it. They can reshape reality itself when united. Aldrich crawled backward, his face gray with terror. You said you only wanted the boy's gift. I lied. She shrugged elegantly. But you humans are so eager to believe what you want to hear. The shackle tightened again. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. Black spots danced in my vision. But through the haze, I saw Marcus break free of Revena's hold, his gift letting him see through her paralysis. Lyra! He ran to me, violet eyes blazing. Together. Like Mother taught us. Together. He grabbed my hands, and suddenly I understood. We'd done this once as children, before we knew what we were. Marcus would see the truth of what should be, and I would make it real. Power erupted where our hands met, silver fire that burned away the shackle like paper. I gasped, drawing my first free breath in 3 years. Impossible! Revena snarled, her beautiful mask cracking to reveal shadow beneath. Not impossible, I said, my voice rough from years of silence but growing stronger. You forgot something. The Moonstone line was blessed by Selena herself. And tonight is her festival. The full moon broke through the clouds, bathing everything in light. Where it touched me, my servant's dress transformed into armor of moonlight. Where it touched Marcus, his youth fell away, revealing the warrior he should have been. But Revena was old, powerful, fed by centuries of stolen gifts. She raised her hands, and darkness rose to meet our light. That's when Theron moved. Not as a king, not even as an alpha, but as my mate. He placed himself between us and Revena, taking the full force of her attack. Dark magic tore through him, and he dropped to one knee, blood streaming from countless wounds. No! The word ripped from my throat. Something inside me snapped. Not broke. Awakened. Fully. Completely. Violently awakened. I was no longer just Lyra Moonstone. I was my mother's daughter, my aunt's niece, heir to a line of women who had stood against darkness for 1,000 years. The moonlight didn't just touch me, it became me. You want to see power? I stood, pulling Marcus up with me. Then see it. Together, we reached for our gift. Not separately, but as one. Marcus's eyes blazed as he saw through every lie Revena had ever told herself, every illusion she used to maintain her form. And I took that truth and made it undeniable, reshaping reality to match what he saw. She screamed as her real form was revealed. Not beautiful, not terrible, just empty. A hungry void that had forgotten what it was to be whole. "You're not ancient," Marcus said, his young voice carrying absolute certainty. "You're just lost. You've been feeding on others because you can't remember who you were." "Stop," she whimpered, the first real emotion I'd heard from her. "Your name wasn't Revena," I said, weaving truth into reality with every word. "It was Luna. You were Seleni's first priestess, cast out for trying to steal divine power. You've been trying to fill that emptiness ever since." The moonlight intensified, and I heard something impossible. Selene herself, speaking through the light. "My lost child." The goddess's voice was soft with sorrow. "Your exile is over. Return to the light." Revena, Luna, looked up at the moon with such longing it broke my heart. "My goddess?" "Come home," Selene repeated. "Be at peace." The woman who had terrorized us dissolved into moonlight, rising toward the sky. As she went, the stolen life force flowed back to the fallen competitors. They gasped, stirring, alive. But Theron still knelt in a pool of his own blood. I ran to him, dropping beside his still form. "No, no, no. You can't. We haven't even—" His hand found mine, weak but warm. "Worth it," he whispered. "To know your name. To hear your voice." "You stupid, noble fool." Tears streamed down my face. "You don't get to die for me." "Not when I just got free." Marcus knelt beside us. "Lyra, the mate bond, if you complete it." "It could kill him faster," I protested. "He's too weak." "Or it could save him." Marcus's violet eyes saw something I couldn't. "Trust me. Trust us. Trust the moon." The moon. I looked up at Selene's face, full and bright above us. "Please," I whispered. "Please." Then I leaned down and bit Theron's neck, right where it met his shoulder, marking him as mine. Power flowed between us, not violent or desperate, but warm, like coming home. His eyes flew open, fully black with gold stars scattered through them. Without hesitation, he surged up and returned the mark, his teeth finding the same spot on my neck. The bond exploded between us, visible to everyone, a thread of light that pulsed with moonlight connecting us absolutely. "Lyra," he breathed against my skin, "my moon." The crowd erupted in chaos, cheers, gasps, and shouted questions blending into a roar of sound, but I heard none of it. The world had narrowed to Theron's eyes, now clear and bright, the wounds on his body healing with impossible speed as our bond settled into place. "You're glowing," he murmured, touching my face with wonder. I was. Light emanated from my skin, peaceful now rather than violent. The armor of moonlight had transformed into a gown that seemed woven from stars themselves. "Your Majesty," Lord Aldrich's voice cut through our moment. He stood surrounded by guards, his face twisted with desperate calculation. "This woman is a fraud. She's bewitched you all with illusions." "Uncle," Marcus said quietly, and there was pity in his young voice. "Stop. Your lies have no power here." Aldrich raised the binding stone, the one that had controlled my shackle. "I still have this. I can prove she's—" The stone crumbled to dust in his hand. He stared at it in horror. "The binding broke when the mate bond completed," I said, standing slowly, helping Theron to his feet. All your chains, all your threats, they're nothing now. Guards, arrest Lord Aldrich for treason, Theron commanded, his alpha authority absolute. For the murder of Lord and Lady Moonstone, for the imprisonment and torture of their children, and for attempted regicide. As they dragged Aldrich away, he screamed about rights, about promises, about power. But power wasn't what he thought it was. It wasn't chains or threats or stolen gifts. It was Marcus, refusing to let bitterness poison him. It was Theron, putting himself between danger and those he protected. It was the choice to break silence when it mattered most. The trial, someone called from the crowd. What about the trial? Theron looked at the assembled nobles, then at the 13 competitors who had nearly died for Aldrich's ambition. The trial is over. You've all proven your worth by surviving, but there's something more important to address. He turned to me, and my heart stuttered at the intensity in his gaze. 3 years ago, the Eastern Reaches lost their ruling family. Today, they've been found. He raised our joined hands, and the mate mark on both our necks pulsed with light. I present to you Princess Lyra Moonstone, heir to the Eastern Reaches, and my mate. The silence was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, slow clapping began. Others joined until the sound thundered across the grounds. But more than that, Theron continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the estate. Tonight is still the Moon Festival, and I believe we interrupted something important. Music began, not the formal, rigid melodies of court, but something wild and ancient, the dance of destinies, but rawer, truer than the sanitized version performed in ballrooms. Theron bowed formally, but his eyes danced with mischief. Princess Lyra, would you honor me with this dance? I'm not sure I remember the steps, I admitted. It's been 3 years since. Then we'll make our own. He pulled me into his arms, and we moved. Not the careful, practiced steps I'd learned as a child, but something instinctive. Around us, others began to dance. Nobles and servants, competitors and spectators. All boundaries dissolved under Seleni's blessing. Marcus partnered with a young noblewoman who blushed prettily at his attention. The recovered competitors celebrated their survival with wild abandon. Even some of Aldrich's former guards, freed from his command, joined the celebration. I have a confession, Theron said as he spun me under his arm. I've been dreaming of you for months. A woman in a servant's clothes with unusual eyes, always cleaning, always silent, always just out of reach. My aunt, I explained. She sent you dreams to bring you here. No. He pulled me closer. She may have opened the door, but my wolf knew. From the moment I saw you at the feast, kneeling there with blood on your hands and defiance in your eyes, it knew. You knew who I was? I suspected. The wolfsbane from your family's estate confirmed it. But Lyra... He stopped dancing, cradling my face in his hands. I didn't care if you were a princess or a servant. I just needed you to be free to choose. And if I choose to return to the Eastern Reaches, to rebuild what Aldrich destroyed, then I'll help you rebuild. If you choose to stay here as my queen, I'll give you half my kingdom. If you choose to leave entirely. His voice caught. Then I'll let you go, though it would tear me apart. I stretched up on my toes, bringing my lips close to his ear. What if I choose all of it? Eastern Reaches restored but allied with your kingdom through our bond. What if I choose to be both princess and queen, to dance with you at every moon festival, to never be silent again? His arms tightened around me. Then I'd call myself the luckiest wolf alive. even though I spent 3 years cleaning tables? Especially because of that. He pressed his forehead to mine. You know what it means to serve, to sacrifice, to endure. Those aren't the qualities of just a princess. They're the qualities of a true queen. The music swelled around us, and I made my choice. Not in words this time, but in action. I kissed him, there in front of everyone, claiming him as publicly as he'd claimed me. When we broke apart, the moon was directly overhead, bathing everything in approval. "My lords and ladies," Marcus called out, his young voice carrying new authority. "I believe tradition demands a toast." 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the restored Moonstone Palace blazed with light, not just candles, but captured moonlight that my gift had woven into permanent illumination. The Moon Festival had come again, but this time I stood at the head table in a gown of midnight blue, the crown of the eastern reaches on my brow, Theron's hand warm in mine. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I'm thinking about last year. How I was on my knees, cleaning wine stains while everyone else danced. And now?" I looked out at the celebration. Marcus stood with a group of young wolves, teaching them how to see through deceptions, not as a weapon, but as protection against those who would harm them. The 13 competitors from that fateful trial had formed their own pack, calling themselves the Moon Blessed, dedicated to preventing another Aldrich from rising. At the servants' entrance, I caught sight of a young girl in rough clothes, trying to remain invisible as she cleared plates. Her eyes held that familiar hollow look of someone carrying secrets too heavy for their years. "Now," I said, standing and pulling Theron with me, "I think it's time to break tradition again." We walked through the crowd, straight to the serving girl. She froze, terrified, probably thinking she'd done something wrong. I knelt before her, bringing myself to her eye level. "What's your name?" Her mouth opened, closed. No sound emerged. "You don't have to speak," I said gently. "I didn't for 3 years. But I want you to know, you're seen. You matter. And if you ever need help, if you're ever in trouble, you come to me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded frantically. Theron offered her his hand. "Would you like to dance?" Just one song. No one should have to only watch during the Moon Festival. Her eyes went wide with shock, but she took his hand. As the Alpha King led a servant girl onto the dance floor, the entire room took notice. But instead of scandal, I saw understanding dawn on faces. One by one, nobles began inviting servants to dance. The rigid boundaries that had defined the festival for centuries crumbled. "You realize you just revolutionized centuries of tradition," Marcus said, appearing at my elbow with a grin. "Good. Some traditions need revolutionizing." I watched Theron carefully guide the girl through the steps, his patience infinite. She was smiling now, really smiling, and I saw her mouth moving, not speaking yet, but trying. Maybe she never would. Or maybe, like me, she just needed time and a reason to break her silence. "Your Majesty," Lord Garrett approached, not Aldrich's enforcer who had been imprisoned with him, but Theron's most trusted advisor. "The Western Territories have requested an audience. There are rumors of another like Revena, someone stealing gifts." "Tomorrow," I said firmly. "Tonight is for dancing." As if summoned by my words, Theron returned, the serving girl scurrying back to her duties with stars in her eyes. "May I?" He bowed formally. "You may." This time, when we danced, I wasn't cleaning tables while others celebrated. I wasn't silent while others laughed. I wasn't hidden while others shone. But I remembered her, that girl with the dirty rag and broken dreams. I honored her silence, her sacrifice, her strength. Because without her, without those 3 years of serving while others danced, I would never have learned the truth that Selena had been trying to teach all along. Sometimes we must kneel before we can rise. Sometimes we must serve before we can lead. Sometimes we must be silent before our voices can truly be heard. And sometimes, just sometimes, an alpha king will take the hand of a servant girl and change the world with a single dance. As Theron spun me under the moonlight, I caught my reflection in a silver mirror. For just a moment, I saw her, the girl I'd been, standing behind the woman I'd become. She was smiling, finally at peace. "What are you thinking now?" Theron asked, pulling me closer. "That every fairy tale needs its darkness to appreciate the light. Every voice needs silence to understand its power. And every love story," I stretched up to kiss him, "needs its beginning in the most unexpected places." Like a servant cleaning tables? Exactly like that. The moon rose full and bright above us, Celine's eternal blessing on those who understand that true power isn't in being served, but in knowing when to serve, when to stand, and when to dance. And we danced until dawn, no longer servant and king, but two souls who had found each other across silence and station, proving that the greatest magic isn't in spells or gifts or bloodlines. It's in the moment when someone sees you, truly sees you, and offers their hand anyway. They say the Moon Festival is when fate reveals itself, but I learned that fate isn't what happens to us. It's what we choose to do with the hand we're offered, even when that hand is extended across an impossible divide. Especially then.